Welcome back to the Right Wave Audio community. My name is John, and for this video, we're going to take our analysis of streaming devices under $200, which we did last month, to the next level. More devices, 10 instead of 5, deeper analysis, and when we get to the end of the video, we are going to give you our picks for different use cases. If you watched the video from December, you will know that we covered the FireTV 4K, the Roku Streaming Stick 4K, the AppleTV 4K, Wi-Fi plus Ethernet, and the WiiM Mini. Your feedback from that video was great because you mentioned that we did not cover the Chromecast with Google TV 4K, and we also didn't cover some of the premium models for each of these units. So for the Fire TV, we now have the Stick 4K Max. For Roku, we now have the Roku Ultra. And for the WiiM, we now have the WiiM Pro. And to this, we also add the NVIDIA Shield TV Pro, which I know a lot of you are using for streaming your own files and with good success. So we wanted to take into account a bigger pool. So now we have a total of 10 devices to look at. Now this first slide that we have goes into the CPUs and the cores and the RAM and all that. We really aren't going to pay a lot of attention to that for our use case because we're looking at audio quality alone right now. We're not looking at video quality. And when it comes to CPU and RAM and all that stuff, it plays a bigger factor on the video side of things and not the audio. Of course, there's no harm at throwing a little more processing and memory power at these units. With that, the more expensive units do tend to have a better chip and more RAM. So the AppleTV and the NVIDIA are among the more powerful pieces of hardware. We have this on the slide if you want to pause and take a look at this in more depth. I will also point out that some of these do have built-in Ethernet, like when you go from the WiiM Mini to the WiiM Pro, now you have an Ethernet port on the back versus just straight Wi-Fi. Also, the NVIDIA Shield has an Ethernet port. We're using the Apple TV, which also has the Ethernet port. We paid a little bit more for that. The Roku Ultra has a built-in Ethernet port, and the remaining devices are all Wi-Fi capable. And of course, we throw in the Marantz Cinima 50 with HEOS into the mix because that's just another way to get these streaming sources into your hi-fi system. And we're looking at this mainly from the perspective of the experience it's going to deliver for a hi-fi system. And not for necessarily these second rooms, but we'll talk about those secondary rooms in your house, those extra zones, and how some of these devices may play better in those environments. The other thing I will point out from this slide is that devices that use similar operating systems generally have a similar user experience and quality of output on them. So you have devices like the NVIDIA as well as the Chromecast, both using the Android operating system, versus the Fire TV has Amazon's own Fire OS, Roku has Roku OS, and of course Apple is iOS, which is a pretty large ecosystem. So those similar devices from those companies are using an operating system, and you generally see the same type of apps regardless of what device that you have. And we can see the similar specs for the WiiM devices, which I have on the next page here because we have so many of these. And as I said, the WiiM Pro has the Ethernet port on it, has more memory. While these devices from WiiM have USB on it, those are really only for power. What kind of stands apart with the WiiM devices, which is important to call out here, is they're the only devices here in this listing that don't have an HDMI port. Instead, they have traditional audio outputs. So these devices are really focused on the audio experience, not the video experience, because there isn't any video built into them. The WiiM Mini has a more basic I/O count on it. They're using 1/8-inch phono jacks on there for analog inputs and analog outputs, and it gives you an optical output. When you go to the WiiM Pro, you've got now full RCA ports instead of the 1/8-inch for in and out analog, and you also have the coax for your digital output, in addition to having in and out Toslink, Sony Philips digital interface, SPDIF on there, and you get a trigger, which is unique. This is the only device in this whole grouping that has a trigger output. So that is something that you might be interested in if you're looking for audio-only devices. So let's turn to where this gets exciting, is what you see on the software end and how that translates into the audio experience. Now we're looking at this first grouping is everything but the WiiM and the HEOS experience, which is on the next page. But right off the bat, we can see the devices themselves have limitations. The FireTV Stick, surprisingly, even though these are fairly low cost, you can get these normally for under $50, whether you're dealing with the standard or the max version. They're both 24-bit, 192 kilohertz on the sampling rate that the device supports. Whereas everything else on this page is 2448 or below. When you're looking at Chromecast, Roku, as well as the NVIDIA products, they're all capped at 16 or 20-bit 48. So those are lower in performance than the others. Now, the first thing you do when you get one of these devices, no matter which one you choose, you want to check to see if the device itself has audio settings. We see this is the case in the Fire TV, and what we do is we set that to the best available so that the Fire TV will always use the best audio output that is available. And we do that for either of these units. The Roku device has an option of auto or pass-through. Now, with the Ultra, it gets quite interesting. And we have this note little on the side with the asterisk. In auto mode, it's going to force every output, regardless whether the source has Atmos or not, to an Atmos output. So you may get all excited to say, oh, I put the Roku Ultra in, and all of a sudden, every piece of content is coming in and reporting. In our case, we're running this through the RMC1 Emotiva processor. And you set that to auto on the sound decoding, it will pick up that it's Atmos that's getting put in if it's in auto mode. And to me, that's a bit phony. In fact, in talking to Roku support, they recommend for home theater environments that you select pass-through mode. I said, well, that's great because it's not going to touch the signal at all, and we're going to be, getting whatever the file is up to the level of the device supports, which is 2448 in the case of Ultra. But when we see in reality, even if we select a 24192 album or track, like I've been using Boz Scaggs a lot because his albums can go up to 192. He has one album's 192, one that's 96, and he has others that are at 44.1. So I can easily switch between his albums and see how it reacts to that. And no matter what I put into the Roku, it's always getting reported on the RMC1 as 1648. It's only outputting 16-bit, not 20 or 24-bit. And that's surprising, right? That we're not getting 24-bit, even though the device is capable of doing that on the music items. You'll see this convention that we use on these slides. And again, if you pause it and look at the slides I have here, if it has an equal sign next to what's being shown, then that is going to mean that is always outputting that sampling rate regardless of the track, and it's how the track has been recorded and saved. If you have a greater than symbol in front of it, that means it will track whatever the track is. So if the track is a 1644.1, it's going to output that. If it's a 2496, then that's what's going to be put out, all the way up in a lot of cases to the 192. Now we have this odd case on the NVIDIA Shield TV Pro when we look at Apple Music, and it's a great feature there. So the other thing that we recommend doing for Apple Music, so we talked about setting the device settings, but also each app might have its own settings. So when you're using Apple Music, you want to go in and make sure that that is set up to be ultra high definition. Now on the FireTV, that is a setting. Not all devices have that app setting that allows you to set ultra high definition. And the fact that it isn't putting out ultra high definition probably is the reason why they don't include that. You also notice when you're playing a track, you can go into track the streaming info and turn that on. It's not on by default, and that's going to give you indication of what the original track source is, what the device is capable of, and what it is outputting. And this is very useful information. I wish that all apps put that out. So that's all very, very helpful there. The other difference we see is the quality icon. Now, the Fire TVs, of course, it's natural because you can set it to output ultra high definition. It will show on particular tracks whether it supports HD or Ultra HD on the file. We also see that indicated on the Android devices, the Chromecast and the NVIDIA, even though that they're really only putting out 1648. So you can see whether the track has been put on the server as HD or Ultra HD, but you can't take advantage of Ultra HD. But you got those icons on there. So that's another thing I wanted to point out. Now, all of these here, unless we have the situation we're using the Roku in auto mode, which forces everything to Atmos, if you put the Roku to pass through and all the other devices and how they normally operate, you'll notice that no matter what the source is, it is showing a Dolby surround icon, or that's what it's receiving at the RMC1 is Dolby surround there. The difference is when you get, and this is the only time this happens, when you pick an Atmos file, the only device that comes up Atmos and not the fake Roku making everything Atmos, AppleTV is the only one using their music app will actually show up on the RMC1 as an Atmos track. So if you want Atmos, your best experience is through the Apple TV using Apple Music. The Amazon Music app really doesn't support it for hi-fi uses. It only supports what they list as Amazon on mobile devices. So you'll see a difference. If you pull up Amazon Music on your phone, you will see that showing up as Atmos. I do not see an Atmos label on any of the streaming device apps that are listed here. And when you use these, it's intended to be used with a pair of headphones that are specifically designed to do spatial audio, Dolby Atmos. It's not the discrete Atmos that we know for home theater. It's specialized for headphones and these kind of single speaker devices, and like the Echo Studio is what they're pushing with the Amazon ecosystem. And so we see people dancing around an Echo Studio in these ads, and you can see the cutaway of this, how it has multiple speakers in it. But these are the only devices you'll get Atmos with on an Amazon Music service. So I feel that those are important distinctions. The Apple Music app is only supported on Roku and on Apple TV. We don't see any support on the Android devices, the Chromecast and the NVIDIA for Apple Music, and we don't see it on FireTV. Now, some have workarounds where you can kind of push these things through your mobile phone and all that, but let's just keep it simple here. There's no app on those devices for Apple Music. Let's hope that comes sometime in the future. The other thing I look at is the experience. So are we getting gapless playback? Gapless to me is very important. Certain albums like Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon and Abbey Road from the Beatles just are unlistenable if there is gaps between the songs. I just can't listen to those albums. The good thing is FireTV does support gapless with their own music app. Roku, I give it an almost. Sometimes I feel like it's transitioning seamlessly, and other times I hear a little gap. It's not like this 1-2 second thing. That's why I give it an almost, but it is not perfect gapless. I do get gapless with Apple TV and the Apple Music app, but not the Amazon Music app. So the Amazon Music app is different, behaves differently on Apple TV than it does on Amazon's own devices. Of course, they make their own stuff sound the best on their own devices, and I think Apple is doing the same here. So that is gapless playback for this first class of device. Then I have track navigation. What I find very odd is while I can on a mobile phone with the Amazon Music navigate to anywhere in the song, I can't do so with the Fire Sticks. I've got to wait for that whole song just to progress from beginning to end. I cannot go to the middle of the song or towards the end of the song. There's no track navigation. I do get that with Amazon Music for Roku. And with Roku, if there's lyrics in the song, the Apple app will let me navigate by choosing the lyric little layer down on the song, but it's not true random access to anywhere in the song. So if there's a large instrumental in that song, I'm not going to be able to navigate randomly with the Roku. And the same thing was the Apple TV. I can only navigate by lyric. So that's unfortunate. Now, NVIDIA Shield does let me do track navigation, random access for the Amazon Music app. Most of these apps support lyrics. So if the song has lyrics in these services, it will display it. Some are easier to find than others. The only one I couldn't see that for was the NVIDIA Shield Pro. Maybe I was missing something. I'll go back and look there. And album details, while the mobile apps for Amazon Music give me some nice nice details of the album, and they call it X-ray. I get to see more into it. I don't have access to that on the streaming devices. With Apple TV, if there's some album details, I can go in and it will give me a few paragraphs on that album. It doesn't give you the same type of details that Amazon does in their mobile devices, but at least they're providing something for the home experience. So this is what we've picked up on here. We've used the latest versions. These are all pretty much brand new devices. We've used the latest versions of the operating system and the apps that we downloaded. And so we should have been getting the best experiences on this. We did not test the lower end NVIDIA Shield TV. This is just the Pro model. Now, if we go over to the next page here, this is where we got the WiiM devices and the Cinema 50. And these experiences are a little different because you have to do everything from a mobile phone to navigate your tracks and everything and set it up. And in the case with the WiiMs, we don't have any way to plug it into a TV to see what's going on. Everything has to be displayed through their app, the WiiM Home app on your phone. They give the ability to change the device settings. You can set these all the way up to 24,192. Now, the last video I did in December, I had trouble getting the optical output of the WiiM Mini to go above 2496, although recently I've been able to do that. Now, it might be because it seems like the Wiim Pro comes with a higher quality optical cable than definitely higher quality. It's not as flimsy as what comes with the WiiM Mini. I was using that same optical cable now with the WiiM Mini, and I was able to go up to 192 kilohertz on the sampling rate. So that's unusual for an optical interface, but they were able to get that to work, and it does come out. The RMC1 recognizes that, and it works fine now. So we can get 192.24 with both coax and optical interfaces out of the WiiMs. Of course, the Pro is the only one with the coax, and that was my primary testing with that. Of course, the Marantz is able to do 24,190 to it as well. So all these are supporting that full rate that we're looking for here. Of course, you could have digital files with a higher rate than that, but they're less common. You will actually see the Apple Music part of the WiiM Home app displaying icons for the track quality. So HD, Ultra HD will show up for Amazon Music, which is a good thing. When it comes to using Apple Music, you have to do it via AirPlay too. And I struggled a bit of getting that all to work right, because initially it's starting to ask for what's the on-screen code to put in to pair these things. And of course, you don't have a screen to pair it with. And the process is a little tricky. You've got to do it through the Apple Home app. And I haven't been very repeatable on getting the right conditions to always do that. So I'm not the one to really explain that process, but I think by luck got it all to work. And similarly, I had to do something special with the HEOS app to make sure that it could get to Apple Music through the AirPlay too. But I have them all working. And what you do in those cases, you actually bring up the Apple Music app, you run that, and then you output it to the speaker that ultimately the HEOS Cinema 50 becomes, or one of the WiiM devices becomes. And you select that, and it spits it out to the respective device. The problem is, while the WiiM app and the HEOS app, if you're in natively in those applications, they will track the quality of the track. So if it's 24,192, that's what you get out. But if you're using Apple Music and you're going through AirPlay 2, you're limited by the limitations of AirPlay 2. And AirPlay 2 will not do higher than 44.1 kilohertz. That's what you'll always get regardless of what the track is. It will be hard set to 24, 41, 44.1. So that was disappointing. Now when it comes to Gapless, all of these here, the WiiM and the HEOS experience with Amazon Music gave you gapless playback. But with Apple Music, the story was a little different. I was reading on the internet, Apple has broken again gapless playback through AirPlay 2. And this was introduced with iOS 16.2, which I was running on mine. Although my older phone with an older version of iOS also had the... So I'm not sure which versions actually did support gapless well, but this is a problem over AirPlay 2. You're not getting a good, consistent gapless play. Now, there was some instances it's inconsistent. When I was running Abbey Road, it would go from track to track seamlessly. But then the next track, it wouldn't. And then I tried the same track again and it worked, and it failed the next time. So it's kind of inconsistent with this. For track navigation, I found the Marantz Cinima 50 with HEOS a better experience. So with the app on your mobile device, you're able to navigate the track. You're able to get lyrics and album details with all these because you can get that from the app. Like I said before, your mobile apps tend to have a better experience than others. So you're able to get lyrics and album information, but only from the Apple Music app. The native HEOS app and the native WiiM Home apps don't have that lyric information on them or the album details. You get that from the Apple Music. I will point out that when running HEOS, it all had to be done through the Marantz because naturally the Emotiva RMC1 doesn't support HEOS, which is a Denon and Marantz technology. So I had to run it through that. And when I'm running through the Marantz, I don't get the same level of feedback on what it's receiving. It just says PCM. On those lines that say RMC1 info and mode, for the one exception of the HEOS, that's really running through the Marantz. So let's wrap this up. What was the overall winner? We felt that the Apple... So let's wrap this up. What is the overall winner? What won by certain categories? And unfortunately, there isn't one clear winner. It's not something that's checking all the boxes in every category. We've got some devices doing well in some areas and some doing well in others. Some do better with the Amazon Music app. Some do better with the Apple Music app. Some do gapless, some don't. And so we kind of had to just average things together with this little chart here looking at the apps that it supports. Does it support both Amazon and Apple? Does it have a good sampling rate? Does it support Atmos? What's the user experience when it comes to music? And we gave it an overall score. And the Apple TV had really the best balance here. Of course, we prefer hardwired Ethernet connections, but Wi-Fi is working just fine. I've been using it in Wi-Fi mode. So we could have equally picked the one without Ethernet and probably been fine. But for what we tested, that we felt was the best balance because it's the only device that will truly give us Atmos in our home theater. And so until the others catch up, they have that advantage. And while the sampling rate is limited to 2448 kilohertz, audibly, we really didn't notice that. Maybe that's a deeper analysis I have to do to compare against like a WiiM or a FireTV. But we also felt that the Apple TV put out a little higher signal than what FireTV does. So when we switch between the two on the same cut, the Apple always sound a little louder than the FireTV, for example. Don't know quite the reason for that, but that was the case. So we felt that that was the best overall experience. We do like being able to see things on our television screen. So that is our preference from RipeWave Audio. But we realize each of you have different use cases, so I wanted to pick out some other, winners here. FireTV would be our next run-up, just from an audio perspective. Frankly, I can't stand the navigation. You got to jump into layers of menus on FireTV. I think Roku has a much better navigation than a FireTV, for example, but its lack of care for audio, it's what I call casual audio. They're not, it's not really for the serious listening experience. I think this is good if you've got a TV in the kitchen and you want to play some music. Well, Roku can do it. If you've got, a simple speaker in a living room and you just want to have that going on during a party, then the Roku can do it. And I call that casual listening. Now, while I didn't test it, I'm just going to give a little extra pick to the NVIDIA Shield. The categories that we're looking at doesn't really make the NVIDIA shine because that doesn't seem to be their focus of audio. Although where it does do well in audio, and I don't have firsthand experience on this, is if you're using it for your own library of files, of your own FLAC files, for example, DSD files. You can store them and host them. This is what I've been told in a very good way. So we'll say this is the server pick, the home server pick. And when it comes to the other streaming devices on overall picks, we've got the WiiM and the Marantz. I think the Marantz, we got to give the nod to that from a home theater point of view, using your mobile device. While I don't think navigating for the tracks on any of these mobile-based, the HEOS or the WiiM, the experience to me of navigating, searching for your music is subpar to all the other TV-based systems. But if you want to go the way of navigating from your mobile device, the Marantz, I think, does it best because it has a couple of extra things it can do. And so that's why I picked that over. Well, the WiiM, I think, is a very good for your maybe second, third zone of your house where you want to have music playing through your home. A great thing that WiiM does, and I didn't talk about this earlier, is you can synchronize the playback over multiple WiiM devices. And you say you take 3, 4 of these things, and they can all be playing. And you can set the volume levels for each zone and then adjust the volume from a master volume, almost like a mixing board, and control those all together. And when you stop the song, start the song, it goes through your whole home. I think as an ecosystem, that's probably working pretty well there. And so I like the WiiM devices. What I like about the WiiM 2 and the Marantz is you get that bit perfect type of experience. So if you're into bit perfect, I probably lean there too, to the HEOS and the WiiM type of experience. If you're okay with 2448, AppleTV all the way. So what are your thoughts? What would have you picked? Were there other devices that you would have had on the list? Now, I'm also going to be looking at some other streaming type devices. I've got a device in from Arylic, so that's going to be interesting to look at. They're also told me about a new device that they're coming out with. I'm taking a preview of that before they launch, and we'll be able to report on that one as well. But what is your feedback? How do you feel about this topic? That would be useful to this community. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And if you want to take your experience to the next level, consider going to www.patreon.com/ripewave and subscribing there. And that we'd really appreciate that. But you can even do a one-time donation. Hit that thanks button here, and you can pick the dollar amount that you want to donate for enjoying this video. And these do take a while to put together. I spent over a week analyzing this, and I've I don't know, I probably have over $500 worth of devices I had to buy out of my own pocket here to do this video. But nevertheless, regardless, if you enjoy this, you can hit the bell notification so you will be informed when the next video is posted. Until then, keep evolving your audio experience.